Hello everyone, you are on the channel Scary Story. Tonight, I have a tale for you that will make you question every shadow in your own home. It's about a young woman named Clara who discovered that the house she grew up in held a secret far more chilling than she could ever have imagined. Clara had always loved her childhood home, a sprawling Victorian house with creaky floors and endless nooks to explore. But there was one part of the house she never quite understood, a long, narrow hallway on the second floor that seemed to lead nowhere. It was always cold and a strange, musty smell hung in the air. Her parents had always told her it was just a structural quirk, a dead end from an old renovation. They kept the door at its entrance locked, saying it was for storage, but Clara never once saw them open it. As a child, she'd press her ear against the cool wood of the door, convinced she could hear faint whispers from the other side. She'd imagine it led to a magical land, like in her storybooks. But as she grew older, that childlike wonder was replaced by a creeping unease. The whispers she imagined started to sound less like magic and more like pained murmurs. Sometimes late at night, she thought she heard a soft, rhythmic scratching from behind the door, like a fingernail dragging slowly across wood. She'd tell her parents, but they'd just laugh it off, blaming the old house's groans or a mouse in the walls. Yet their smiles never quite reached their eyes. Years passed. Clara went off to college, and the mystery of the hallway faded into the background of her busy life. But when her parents tragically passed away in a car accident, she had to return to the house to sort through their belongings. The place was just as she remembered, but now it was filled with a profound silence, a heavy emptiness that clung to everything. The weight of her grief was immense. As she sifted through dusty boxes and old photo albums in the attic, she stumbled upon a small, leather-bound journal. It was her mother's. Her heart ached as she opened it, the familiar handwriting bringing a fresh wave of sorrow. The early entries were what she expected. Notes about gardening, recipes, and sweet anecdotes about Clara as a baby. But as she flipped further, the tone began to change. The entries became shorter, more frantic. Her mother wrote about the chill, a coldness that wasn't just physical, but seemed to seep into her very soul. She mentioned the hallway. "It's getting stronger," one entry read. "I can hear it more clearly now. It wants out. He says I'm imagining it, but I see the fear in his eyes too." Clara's blood ran cold. He, her father, what were they so afraid of? The last entry was just a few weeks before the accident. It was a single terrifying sentence scrawled in shaky handwriting. "It knows my name." Clara slammed the journal shut, her hands trembling. All the strange feelings, the dismissed noises, the locked door, it all came rushing back, not as childhood fantasy, but as a very real, very present threat. She had to know what was behind that door. Downstairs she found her father's old toolbox. Rummaging through it, her fingers closed around a set of keys. One of them was old and ornate, completely different from the modern house keys. With her heart pounding in her chest, she walked back up to the second floor and stood before the forbidden door. The key slid into the lock with a rusty click. She turned it and the lock sprang open. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the door inward. A gust of frigid, foul-smelling air washed over her, carrying a scent of decay and damp earth. It wasn't a storage closet. Before her stretched a long, narrow corridor, just as she'd always imagined. But it wasn't empty. The walls were lined not with wallpaper, but with what looked like rough, hand-carved wooden panels. And on each panel, a face was etched into the wood. Faces contorted in silent screams, their eyes wide with terror. There were dozens of them, men, women, and even children, their expressions of agony captured forever in the grain. As she stepped cautiously inside, the door swung shut behind her with a deafening slam, plunging her into near darkness. Panic seized her. She fumbled for her phone, its flashlight beam cutting a nervous path through the gloom. That's when she saw it. At the far end of the corridor, another door stood slightly ajar. A faint, pale light pulsed from within. The scratching sound she remembered from her childhood was back, louder now, more desperate. It was coming from that room. Driven by a terrifying need to understand, she crept forward, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The faces on the walls seemed to watch her, their wooden eyes following her every move. She felt a strange pressure building in her ears, and the whispers started again, clearer this time. They weren't just random sounds, they were names, murmured over and over. As she reached the door at the end, she hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to break down the door she came through and flee this house forever. But her mother's last words echoed in her mind. "It knows my name." She had to see. She pushed the door open. The room beyond was small and bare, except for a single wooden chair in the center, and sitting in that chair was a figure. It looked like a man, but his form was gaunt and twisted, his skin pale and translucent, stretched tight over his bones. He was carving something into the wall with a long, jagged fingernail. He didn't seem to notice her at first, his focus entirely on his work. Clara's light fell upon the wall he was carving. It was another face, another silent scream. But this one was different. This one was horribly familiar. With a jolt of pure terror, she realized it was her mother's face. The figure stopped carving. Slowly, agonizingly, it turned its head. It had no eyes, only dark, empty sockets. But she knew it could see her. A lipless mouth stretched into a grotesque smile, and then it spoke. Its voice a dry, rasping whisper that filled the room, the same whisper from her nightmares. "Clara," it hissed, "you've come home. There's a space on the wall just for you." Clara didn't scream. The sound was trapped in her throat. She stumbled backward, her mind reeling. This thing, this creature, had been living in her house her entire life, trapped in this secret corridor. Her parents hadn't been protecting her from a draft or some old storage space. They had been its keepers, and now they were gone. The creature rose from its chair, its joints cracking like dry twigs. It took a slow, deliberate step toward her. She turned and fled, fumbling blindly for the door she'd entered through. The whispers grew into a cacophony of shrieking names in her head. The carved faces on the wall seemed to lunge out at her in the flickering light of her phone. She slammed against the exit door, rattling the knob, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. She was trapped. The scraping sound started again, closer this time, not on the wall, but on the floor behind her. It was coming for her. She pounded on the door, screaming for a help she knew would never arrive. Through the wood she could hear it, that dry, hissing voice whispering her name over and over again, a chilling promise of what was to come. Clara was now part of the house, another secret to be kept, another face for the corridor, waiting for the next person to turn the key. So next time you hear a strange noise in your home, or wonder about that one door you never open, be careful. Some secrets are better left locked away. Thank you for listening to Scary Story. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey into the dark. Until next time, stay safe and try not to listen too closely to the whispers in the walls.